and welcome to a very special edition of Soap Scoop, the Inside Soap podcast. We are joined by a very special guest. We've got the amazing Joshua Richards, plays Beowulf in Emmerdale, with us today. We're very, very lucky. Obviously, we've had trial week in Emmerdale. It's been a massive week, a big build-up to Bear, Paddy and Dylan taking the stand. We now know the result, and we're kind of seeing how it's going to impact the characters going forward. So Joshua, welcome to Soap Scoop. Thank you for joining us.
You're more than welcome, Johnny. Nice to be here.
So first of all, I wanted to know how you felt as the actor who's played Bear throughout this whole ordeal. A lot of build up to the trial and the verdict. How did you feel about it when you knew what the outcome was going to be for your character and for Paddy and Dylan as well?
Well, it has been quite a journey. I mean, it all started for me shooting last August, and we went into all sorts of dark places, into living in the car, to living in the attic with all the other, first of all on my own, and then all the others brought in, and then getting very dark and going to very depressing places. And then finally, with all this horrible tale of modern slavery coming to a conclusion with the deaths of both Celia and Ray, and then finally to find yourself arrested by the police and then brought to court. It was a great relief then to see the episode on Tuesday where Matt, the director, did a very clever thing of bringing back flashbacks of what had happened in the past, just to remind people, because it's been so long, the story has run for so long, to have a conclusion, and albeit, I think, a good conclusion, with 2 found not guilty, 1 found guilty, and for Paddy to only get a suspended sentence for perverting the course of justice is nothing short of a miracle.
Did you know the outcome before you got the script? So, like, were you sat down and talked through the whole arc, including the outcome and the verdict, or did you only know that when you got that week's script?
Well, we sort of had an inkling of what was going to occur, yeah, because it would be a very cruel blow if I suddenly found myself being carted off to prison and out of Emmerdale. So we did have an inkling that, we wouldn't be going down the Swanee or off to Sing Sing. So, yes, in one way, a happy conclusion.
Yeah, and for Bear, it's very, this is obviously the beginning of another chapter of Bear's story, to the aftermath of it, him coping with it, what this impact will have psychologically. We're just kind of at the start of that. But how did you feel in terms of where this could then take Bear? You've already been on this incredible journey this past year, and were you kind of sat down with the producers to say, okay, not guilty, no prison, but where do we go now? Like, what was your kind of take on that? What next now that we've gone beyond the trial?
Well, I haven't yet had that conversation with the producers yet, because just waiting for everything to settle and for other stories inevitably are kicking in. I'm already doing stuff that Bear is doing, that the effects of his experience with this modern day slavery is very prevalent in his life, and he still feels it. He's still a bit damaged from it. Obviously, I think he will recover, but where he goes from here, that's another conversation I've got to have with the producers here.
Yeah.
At the moment, I think we're just letting the dust settle, and to wind up the next story, to get people interested and to put this to bed. There are inevitable consequences of what has happened to him, and this will affect him in the short term. But long term, who knows? I mean, I am working.
Aha. Well, tell us about this. Bear is going to try and get back to some semblance of normal life, kind of a bit of a new start. He's got a job. My eye tells me that's Caleb's
depot, yes.
Yeah. So tell us about that. So he's going to... Is that going to help him kind of have a bit of routine and get back to normality, or is this going to be a bit too much too soon for Bear?
Well, he's going to give it a go, to try and integrate himself back into society and to work as a normal person would, and not as somebody who is being told what to do. And I think he's already finding it a bit difficult to assimilate back into reality and normality. But we'll see what happens. But he's back in action in some way.
Does he feel supported by the community now? He's got new workmates and he's been employed, and like you say, it must be triggering, and I'm sure we're going to see things that are going to be triggering for him. But does he feel like everyone is on his side, because for a long time he felt a lot of self-loathing. He felt like maybe people were judging him. How does he feel in this new job in terms of support?
Well, I think everybody is being supportive towards him, but I think it's taken him a little bit of time to get himself back into into the community where he does feel properly supported. But as you know, as you've just said, he did have a very bad time that led him into this unfortunate predicament, and I don't think that will go away so easily, as I think he has trust issues now with what he believed to be right with Ray, and to realize that he'd been duped and fooled made him feel a very sad and stupid old man. And I think his distrust is still very prevalent.
And do you think there's part of Bear going forward that still feels he should have gone to prison? Because he did feel that, didn't he? He did feel that's part of why it got so messy. He wanted to be punished. He had kind of told himself, I did a bad thing, I should pay the price. Where's he at now with that kind of line of thinking? And do you think that he still feels maybe he should have served some kind of sentence for what he did?
Yeah, I think he feels incredibly guilty that Paddy got a suspended sentence and had the risk of his whole career as a vet being taken away from him. And as he did say on last Tuesday's episode, that that's why he said, that's why I said it was all me, because I didn't want you and Dylan to get into any kind of trouble or be involved, and I would have taken the blame for everything. And I think that's what he feels, that he still believes it was a mess of his own making, which of course it wasn't. He was a victim. But yes, the guilt, I think, is still being carried by him, and we'll see how that goes.
Do you think him and Paddy, this is going to be, there was lots of reassurance from Paddy, and as you say, it was just a very tragic mess in the end, really. Despite Paddy's assurances, do you think this could affect their father-son relationship going forward in terms of how Bear feels that guilt, that Paddy is paying a price for something that Bear perceives he did? Would Paddy feel resentment? Where do you think it might go for them in their dynamic?
I'm not really sure. I mean, it could go any way whatsoever. That's the beauty of a continuing drama, is that you really don't know. And to be honest with you, I don't know, because they haven't told me yet. But what I do feel is that Paddy has been incredibly supportive, and it wasn't his neglect that put Bear in this situation. It was Bear's own self-loathing. As for the guilt going forward, I'm sure he's going to bear that for quite some time. But I think hopefully there'll be some kind of reconciliation along the way where he realizes it wasn't his fault and he was a victim and couldn't do much about it.
Yeah. I really liked, and I know a lot of the fans appreciated revisiting Anya's story and her place in the story. Obviously, on the episode where we discovered the verdict, Bear Paddy went back to Anya's grave, and it all kind of brought it as a full circle moment, really. And there was that beautiful monologue about the whole storyline and about, what the awareness Emmerdale's been raising with what they've done. Were you pleased that Anya got a mention and you revisited that part of it? And do you feel like Anya almost came to represent this very human consequence of this awful things that are going on in the real world? That going back to Anya must have felt quite important.
Yes, I think it is important. And funny enough, I can't say too much, but I'm doing a bit now where Anya's presence is felt because she's brought up again and she's not forgotten. I still wish that we could have done a bit more with Anya when we had her, because she was such a terrific actress and she was such fun to work with, and she worked so hard, and it would have been nice to have done even more. But I loved the way it did come full circle, that we saw her again, that we knew that not just the bad guys died in this, good innocent people lost their lives.
Yeah.
And it was great to be reminded that that is the true loss, that's the true horror, and that's the true tragedy, not two crooks getting their comeuppance. One killing the other and the other one having to be crushed to death to stop him from murdering people with a hammer. But the poor innocent girl who just wanted to earn enough money to look after her child, which is incredibly sad. I'm so glad we went back and I brought it back to a conclusion, and having the opportunity to have the little monologue by the graveside or the grave site. It was quite funny, really, because that day was unbelievably windy and it was blowing. You can't tell it so much on the screen because the microphones had to be concealed because you couldn't hear us. It was blowing, so we were literally blowing us off our balance. And Matt, the director, shot it once. I just did it in one take.
Oh,
and he said,
wow.
let's get the hell out of here because we're going to be blown to death. So we weren't in that field for very long, but it was great to be able to finally wrap it all up and maybe a 2 meter parcel. I don't know, but I think we had to just put the full stop on the end of it.
Yeah,
Although
essentially.
it's not gone. It's not
It's
gone.
not.
It'll never go away.
Of course, of course. What reaction have you had from the public so far after the trial? I mean, do you put yourself out there with, with the fans? Do a few people come up to you in the street? It's been a few days, or do you look at comments online or anything like that? What have you got a sense of the reaction to it, or from other people, from your colleagues?
A couple of comments, nice comments from colleagues and a couple of people I know around where I live, but I don't do social media. I don't read the papers. I don't follow that. I'm not interested, really. If you want to read about yourself, be prepared to read bad. So I keep away from it.
But you're your local pub, aren't you? Obviously, when we all thought Bear had died, you got a new job. Going along with the fact that you'd left the show, and actually you hadn't left the show. We found out the truth later. But
I did
yeah.
that. Yeah, started collecting glasses. They said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I need a job."
Have you been in since the trial verdict? Were people happy that Bear's been spared?
I hadn't been in much at all. I only go out for about an hour, and I have a pint or two, and then I come home. But there was some neighbours who said they had seen it and they loved it and they thought it was brilliant. But I don't put myself out there to find out.
Well, we can tell you that there's a lot of love for Bear. We can tell you from Inside Soap and Soap Scoop, a lot of love for Bear.
Well, that's nice.
I wanted to go back to Ray and Bear's relationship, which was so interesting and still something that I think, Bear's questioning and is always turning over in his head. Obviously, he had to relive a lot at the trial about their relationship, obviously about Ray's death. At this point, after the trial, is there part of Bear that thinks Ray could have been redeemed somehow? Or did the trial make him think he was irredeemable?
I think before the trial, he still had this, oh my God, what have I done? He was like a son to me. Took that moment when he was about to kill Paddy where he realized, I've got to intervene. I've somehow just stop this. I think I love the sequence where he's with Lucy, the counsellor, and we have that sequence a few months back where Ray came back in his mind, and he almost in that episode exorcised Ray.
Yeah,
and say, no, you're just evil. And I think in his mind, he's finally come to the conclusion that no, what Ray was wrong, evil, manipulative, and despotic. And like he says to Paddy, but you're my son. You're my son. And what he did, of course, he did for his son.
So he kind of sees it a lot clearer now, more clarity.
Very much, I think.
Yeah. Is there any interaction that Bear's had or will have with Laurel? Because Laurel and Ray obviously had a relationship. Laurel is the only other person, I think, other than Bear, that did see maybe a chink in the armor to Ray. Ray himself was a victim from childhood. He was corrupted and, as you say, irredeemable in the end. But Ray had his own story that Laurel and Bear had a little peek into. Is there going to be any kind of discussion between Bear and Laurel about that? Would you like to kind of explore that with those two characters talking about the other side of Ray?
Well, I'd love to explore that. I don't know which way the producers and scriptwriters are going to go, but certainly it's food for thought because, yes, they've got the most insight out of anybody else, even more, I think, than Dylan or April, because I think there was more of they never really felt in their minds that they were threatened although they did realize afterwards that, of course, they'd both been manipulated as much as the young ones had. But I think they felt there was a genuine warmth between them. So that would be a very fascinating thing to do, especially to do work with the wonderful Charlotte Bellamy would be a joy to do because she's wonderful to work with, and to do something on those lines. Are you listening, scriptwriters? So that would be very splendid to do indeed.
Also talking about other relationships in Bear's life and other potential things that might happen. A little while ago, you did say that you'd like Bear to find love. If you're looking at happier times ahead for Bear, which fingers crossed there are. Tell me more about that. And is there anybody in your mind that could be a potential love interest for the character?
It was talked about a long, long time ago that they're trying to, it didn't work out with Faith. Didn't work out with Mary, didn't work out with them. I think he brought a couple of mother and daughter back to the pub one night. if I remember. It was all
He's
a
a
bit.
trier. He's a trier.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I think there's some companionship because basically, I think he, even though he's living in the house with Mandy, Paddy, and Dylan, I think he's lonely, and I think he needs somebody maybe of his own age to share and talk about things. And I did go to Louise Jameson's birthday party the other night, and I did say to her, let's have a word. Maybe you and me could have a really lovely friendship again because we've both been exploited by. She had that awful lady who exploited her.
Yes, they've both been duped, haven't they? They've both been through the ringer.
They've both got children who are vets. They've both got grandchildren, and it's always a joy working with Louise as well.
Had you met? Do you know? Did you know Louise previous to Emmerdale? Had your paths
Yeah,
crossed?
yeah, we did a BBC Words and Music on Radio 3 together, and we had the same agent at one stage. So, yeah, I've known Louise a while, and when she came to Emmerdale, I was like, oh, great, a mate is coming.
I
She
think
said,
they'd be an interesting. The friendship, I think, would be really fun to do a bit more of because they're a bit wild as well, aren't they? Like obviously Bear is going through what Bear is going through, but Bear is when he's on top form, he's very lovable and he's quite unpredictable and
yeah,
he's got a rebellious side. Mary very similar. Mary does she marches to the sound of her own drum. What kind of, if you could storyline it yourself, or you could have a say in Mary and Bear have a little spin-off or an episode to themselves, what would they do? Where would they go? What kind of a day out would they have, or what would it look like?
they could go to the wrestling, maybe or maybe she could go to an event like a protest about something, and maybe Bear sees her show her courage that she does have, even when she's been vulnerable. We see her very afraid and unable to do things. But also the spirit she has as a local journalist. She has a great deal of courage to take things on and make a strong point and issue, even though she spent many years in a marriage that she wasn't happy in and couldn't be her true self. But I think maybe Bear could also learn from her ability to say, no, we'll take this on. Don't be cowed by this. We're going to take this on. And I think he'd benefit from that, and also her intelligence, because Bear could do with a little bit of intelligence.
Yes, maybe there's brains and brawn and bravery, and there's maybe one they've not got all three between them. If you get
They could share. They could share between the three of them. The two of them, they'd have the lot. Yeah, they'd have all three.
Yes, that's true. I'm seeing a detective series, Joshua. I'm seeing Bear and Mary's spin-off. Could be
Mary Berry, the Mary Berry mysteries.
yes, and because cozy crime, it could be in the lovely Dales setting. I
Yeah,
think in another life, Mary would have blown the whistle as local journalist in that era. She would have, I don't know, helped raise awareness about this subject, about the modern slavery. She would have, yeah, she would have blown it. I think maybe we needed Mary earlier on, to expose this whole thing.
yeah. Well, if she'd been told, I think she might have, because of course they kept her in the dark about it all, so she didn't know anything about it until the very
Yeah,
end when they kicked her out.
oh, that's true. She was.
They were afraid she was going to get caught up in it.
Yeah, she was impacted. Well, the whole village was impacted, wasn't it? I think it's amazing how it did affect everybody. Obviously you were at the center of it. Lots of other characters really form the nucleus of who it affected, but the whole village has kind of been impacted by it. I know you're really passionate about what the show was doing and kind of raising awareness on it. It's something that you had already worked on projects about. I know, pre Emmerdale.
Well, what's fascinating, though, is that, Johnny, on Monday, there was a release from Eleanor Lyons, is her name, and she's actually head of the Independent Anti-Slavery Commission. And she said that the report they published on Monday, that there's 23,000 people believed now to be in modern-day slavery, and that's up by 22%. And a fifth of the victims are from the UK. A fifth, 9% are Vietnamese and 13% of Eritrean nationality. And that's a lot. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of lost souls, and all dependent on the three factors of rising living costs, debt, and insecure work. And as everything is heading towards AI as well, and I think the propensity we do see that people at the top are getting richer and richer and people at the bottom getting poorer and poorer. This thing is rising, and it's prevalent, and it's real. And it's not just in the rural areas, it's bang under our noses in urban areas. And it was I thought, very timely that for some reason that report came out on Monday, the day of our trial.
Well,
So
it
we
goes to
are
show,
zeitgeist.
yeah, it's very much the zeitgeist, and it has been in the news this week. It's in the news a lot, unfortunately. But yeah, you're right. It has the timing of it has been well. It proves Emmerdale. It's got its finger on the pulse, really.
Yes.
I think there's been so many challenging moments for you as an actor in this whole plot, and you've been absolutely incredible. Like, on behalf of all the fans and Inside Soap readers, the performance has been absolutely incredible. What has been the biggest challenge, or when you look back at it at this last year, does a moment stand out for you that was perhaps the most challenging part for you to tackle as an actor?
Yeah, I think there were several. I think I've already said this because I did say it to somebody and they did print it. But I did think long and hard before I said it because I'm very private. But I did say that my father actually suffered a similar kind of depression in old age. So I knew what it looked like. And then I was speaking to my sister on the phone and she just burst into tears because she said it was like watching Dad. And that really got to me because I thought, it's all men ask the questions. I have now become my father. When you look in the mirror and you say, I see him now. I never saw him before. And my sister said, I always thought of you looking like Mum, but when I saw you in this, your dad, completely. I can see him, like he's alive and well. And I think that was the one that, and it wasn't my reaction, it was my sister's reaction. That
Unexpected, not something you would play, even though obviously you've been through that, a quite personal thing to have in your memory archive. But it sounds like it was something that was quite organic, and it happened as you kind of tackled those scenes.
Yeah. And of course, as I've said before, when you do a play, you do the same thing every night. You rehearse it, and you go and do the play. You do the same thing every night. Might be for a year, might be six months, might be 3 months. But it's the same thing every night. But with this, you're coming into work and it's a different thing every day. So there's a progression. It progresses. And that's where I think the real work kicks in, because you can't just do the same turn. You've got to alter it. You've got to move on because this plot has progressed, or you're going deeper. I mean, obviously, I'm an actor. I wasn't living this for real.
Sure.
Your mind's got to be there to make sure that people watching it can have some degree of conviction that this is real or is a representation of something which is real and poignant and pertinent.
Yeah.
So yes, it's a constant progression, which is rather difficult and different from just doing a play, the same thing every night.
Yeah, a different discipline, isn't it? Because you've got to evolve the character. You have a parallel life to the character. It's very, and it's gone. Don't have time for retakes and things very often in a soap. It moves so fast. So yeah, it must be interesting in terms of going forward as well. Now Bear's at the depot and he's got this, the new colleagues and everything. What's that dynamic been like for you after such a traumatic year and after a lot of quite intense, quite focused, a lot of it only with a few other actors, with Joe Absalom, who was Ray, a lot with Don Brunt, obviously, is Paddy. Now you're in a gang at the depot. There's lots of big personalities in that depot. It's a bit more light-hearted, I guess. What's that been like for you to go, for Bear to go to work in a regular workplace with some more kind of, I guess, characters like Kerry and Jay they're not as mean as the characters that Bear's been with.
No, it's lovely to work with, people that you don't normally work with. It's always a joy. And of course, we're so blessed in Emmerdale. We've got so many talented people. And when you come to work, you just think, this is great. And I'm in the depot now, so I'm not in the gloomy attic. I've got funny Laura, Kerry, I've got Jay fussing about. I've got Caleb being all butch, and the lovely Will Ash, who's nothing like that. He's just a sweet, sweet man. Jay Consul, who plays Billy. It's just lovely to see my friends again. And I'm not locked in the attic on my own.
It must be very nice. And do you think of all the places Bear could work, or if you could choose it, because there's a lot of work opportunities for such a small village. There's lots of businesses, isn't there? Is that the place you choose for Bear to work, or is there any other place you'd like Bear to have a job just because it's quite a nice set, or you'd like going into that set every day? Maybe the salon. I know the salon's in trouble. What about
No, salon's in trouble. No, but Bear's not very good at doing nails. I think I quite like the depot because now that we've got it a studio built of it, because I did do a scene in it before, but then it was up at the village in a very cold barn.
And it was
Now
the
we've got it.
exterior as well, wasn't it? So it was
Yeah.
actually out at the exterior set. Oh, so you're in a warm studio at least, and it's
Warm
got
studio
space.
now. It's much better. Yes, it's vast relief. So it's
Mm.
quite nice to be in the studio and have all the facilities here rather than being up in a drafty old barn or a new barn.
Well, yes, that's true. That's true. And just finally, what can we expect from the future? Obviously, as you say, the dust has got to settle. He's been through a lot, Bear, and we're kind of entering a new chapter. We're going to have maybe some PTSD happening. How would you sum up the next few weeks for Bear? What can the audience expect?
In the next few weeks, I think you can expect him to be trying to work his way back into the community with the help of friends and family to get a job, to get working, and just to get on an even foot again. And like you said, maybe we will be seeing some elements and vestiges of PTSD because he has been through a lot. But I think the next few weeks, you're just going to see him trying to find his feet again and stand up and get back in the ring.
I mean, if that he gets knocked down, but he gets up again, that's Bear, isn't it? So we're hoping that he's got that wrestling, that fighting spirit. Are we going to see a bit of that breaking out?
That's still there. Yeah.
Well, Joshua, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your time, and we're very pleased that Bear is back in the community. And we've really enjoyed Trial Week. So well done to all you guys at Emmerdale. Such an amazing week. And yeah, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Johnny. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you very soon.
Bye.